All right. Good morning, everyone, and thanks a lot for being here at the presentation. I would like to begin by thanking Black Hat and Jeff Moss especially for creating this wonderful platform for aspirants like us to come and give a talk. So it's a good learning experience for both, for me as well as a speaker and for everyone else who is here to listen up. So it's something like I've been trying for last 2 years. I've submitted over 4 or 5 papers, I think, in almost all formats of Black Hat, and this is the first one that got accepted. So I'm pretty excited about it. So I'll quickly start. There is a bit of shortage of time. So I'll go ahead by quickly introducing myself. So my name is Abhinav Singh. I work for JP Morgan as a security engineer. Prior to that, I had worked with Symantec. I have a career of around 3.5 years into information security now. And I've also authored a couple of books on Metasploit and penetration testing. You can find me on Twitter, @AbhinavBomb is my Twitter handle. I'm also a part of a small malware hunting group called Malware Must Die. Anyone has heard of this group before on Twitter? Okay, there are a couple of people. So this group is a small group of individuals. We usually do malware hunting and open knowledge sharing. So today my talk is on the underground ecosystem of credit card fraud. So these days credit card frauds are quite in the news. We hear a lot about data being stolen, credit card details or plastic card details have been stolen. So here I would like to specify on the underground ecosystem. I mean, what happens after your details have been stolen by the hackers? What happens after that? So that will be the main motive of this talk. So I'll quickly go through the agenda. So I'll start with a brief introduction to the card-based payment system, how it actually works. It will just give you an overline just to make up the base of how things work. The next one would be POS malwares. So I'm specifically covering POS malwares because they are quite in news these days. So I'll just cover up a couple of slides to give an introduction to how exactly the POS-based malwares work. The next one will be understanding the underground shopping mall, the place where the stolen information gets public, where people go and just buy it and they can do the frauds that they want to. After that, we'll discuss about the money flow and the demand and supply. This is something pretty interesting which I have noticed for last 1 year, how the demand and supply varies in these shops and how exactly the money flows in the entire ecosystem. The last one would be just one slide on future scope, challenges and solutions. There's nothing much to speak about it. Okay, so I'll quickly begin with understanding how the credit card payments work. So initially I thought of starting this talk by asking a question like, how many of you actually use credit card? But I think that question is not very relevant because all of us in one way or the other use one way or the other a plastic card to make payments. So let us say you went to a merchant store and you have made the purchase. Now you want to make the payment for your purchase that you have made. So what you would do, you would hand over your card to the merchant guy who is sitting there, whoever is monitoring the payments. So once the merchant guy has your card, he would use that card, he would swipe it or maybe enter the details into a point of sale terminal. That is the terminal that actually facilitates the authorization and authentication of any kind of payment that you are making using the credit cards. So once those details are entered, what happens next is that the point of sale machine, it communicates with the acquirer bank. So that is the bank that helps the merchant in getting paid for whatever items he has sold you just now. So what the acquirer bank does is that it communicates with the issuer bank. It raises a ticket or it raises a token with the issuer bank. So the issuer bank is the bank which has issued the card to the cardholder. So you can see the relation between the issuer and the acquirer. These are the two different entities which comes into action. So the acquirer bank is the one that helps the merchant in getting his payment, and the issuer bank is the one that helps the cardholder to make the payment for whatever purchase he is making. So once a token is raised by the acquirer to the issuer bank, the issuer then verifies and authorizes whether you are actually eligible for that payment or not. And if everything goes fine, then the issuer pays back to the acquirer bank. And this is how the payment actually works. This is just a brief structure. There are many more steps that are involved as well, but I'm just covering an overview of how things would work. Okay. So what were the key components that were involved, I mean, most of the things actually happen in the background. We really don't see these kinds of things like the issuer or the acquirer bank. So the two key components that are involved is, one is the card and the other one is the point of sale or the POS terminal. So we'll see how these two actually play the most critical role in this entire payment system, because the card is the one that you have and the point of sale terminal is the one that the merchant holds. Apart from that, everything else happens pretty much in the background. So these are the two key components that we'll be taking up throughout this slide. Okay, so now we have built up a quick overview of how the payment system works. So the next step would be to understand the kinds of attacks that happen. So if you might have heard in news these days that, okay, I mean, there are big retail chains maybe in US or some other countries that got compromised. They might be because of some vulnerability exploitation, or maybe some kind of key logging or phishing activity, or let's say brute forcing weak passwords. And so these are the various ways by which the attackers craft social engineering attacks in order to, target the particular retail chains. So there is one thing that stands out among all of these, and that is the POS RAM malwares. So the reason why they are so popular is because they are directly affecting the key components which we just now seen. So the POS or the point of sale malwares, they directly affect the terminal that facilitates the entire payment system. This is the reason why they are so much talked about, and that's why they prove to be a very lethal weapon in this entire ecosystem. So I'll just quickly go through how a POS malware works. We'll just give a quick breakthrough on it. So what happens when you hand over your card to the merchant? What he does is that he swipes his card onto his point of sale device. So what happens in the background is that the unencrypted data from the POS terminal is copied into its random access memory, or maybe its primary memory, for some short period of time. So the main memory of the point of sale terminal might have, let's say, different things loaded into its memory. There might be various kinds of processes that would be running into the memory. So how would the malware actually identify where to find the credit card information or debit card or any plastic card information? So let us assume that the mal.exe, the red one, is the malicious process that is running on the POS terminal, and the RAM is the corner box that is represented. You can see it has all kinds of random information in the memory. So what mal.exe would do is that it would try and see what are the different processes that are running into the memory, and it will take a snapshot. Let's say at a particular time it takes the snapshot of the memory. It then looks at what are the different processes that are running inside it. Let's say there were 20 different processes inside it, and so the malware cannot just go and scan all the 20 processes to figure out which one has the credit card information or, let's say, payment information. So what it does is that it maintains a small blacklist. Let's say the known processes where he cannot find anything, but that process might run on the system. For example, let's say a browser process, i.e. explorer.exe. So the memory content of browsers changes very rapidly. So doing any calculation in it might be costly. So what they do is that they blacklist that process, they leave that process, they don't actually scan that process. And once they have their meaningful process, they can now scan the memory contents to figure out the unencrypted payment data. Now, how do they scan it? That is something important that we can just quickly look through. So there are two ways basically how they do it. It's not very complicated. We'll see in a couple of slides how exactly that is done. So they do it by maybe doing some specific function calls, or maybe writing normal regular expressions that can match up with the card information. Now, to understand how that regular expression matches or how that regular expression works, we'll give just a quick introduction of how the data is actually stored on the plastic cards, on the magnetic strips specifically. So here is what the POS malware dumps once it has found out the information from the memory. So POS malwares, they have all the other basic functionalities that a normal malware or a virus can have, like doing C2 activities, dropping data to its server, having kill switch to just remove it once it is done. So it has all other basic functionalities as well. So if you look at an example, the kind of data that the malware dumps onto its parent server would look something like this. So this is just for an illustration purpose. It is not an actual data or something that resembles it, but this is just for an illustration of the kinds of things you would see when you actually buy some kind of credit card information or just go and exploit a C2 server for any POS malware. So as of now, it will look like pretty much random data. Now to make sense of it, let us just quickly see how exactly the information is stored on the plastic cards. So if you look at the back of your credit cards, you will find that it has a magnetic strip. Now the information on magnetic strip is stored on tracks or maybe sectors. So there are 3 important sectors: track 1, track 2, and track 3. So the track 1 can contain the card number, the holder's name, the expiration date. Similarly, the track 2 can hold card numbers and expiration date. Track 3 is pretty much just a not very mandatory field. It can contain information like loyalty points or reward points and things like that. Then there will be a signature strip just for the verification of the owner of the card. Now, how exactly the data is stored on track 1 and 2 is critical for the POS malware as well, and the kinds of things that we see when we want to, let's say, buy some kind of credit card information. So here is a track 1 and 2 block diagram. If you look at the upper line, that is a bit small, but it is pretty much the dump data which we just now seen. So this is a simple representation. The one on the left is representing the track 1, and one on the right, the shorter one, that is representing the track 2 data. So if you start matching the blocks with the dumped data, you will see that it's pretty much aligning. If you see on track 1, the start senatorial is that percentage sign, and if you look at the dump data, it's starting with a % sign. Then there is a format code, let's say B for bank. Then there is a primary account number. Then there is a field separator. That sign, I don't know what that sign is called, just treat it as field separator. Then followed by the cardholder's name. Then there is that expiry date, 0806, and so on. Similarly, you can match the track 2 data as well. So now if you look at this dump data, it will make far more sense to you and to the POS malware as well. So now writing a regular expression to match something like this inside the memory would be pretty much easy. So this is how the POS malware actually functions. They actually match the contents of the memory to look for something that represents track 1 and track 2 data. So if you just give a quick look at the track 2 data as well, you'll see that it begins with the start senatorial is a semicolon followed by the primary account number. Then there is a field separator as equals to, then expiry, and then again the data. So this is just a quick representation of how things would appear, how actually the POS malware attacks the terminals in order to steal the information. Okay, so now we have built up a little bit of background on how the payment system works, how the cards work, how the authorization and things work, and how the attack is made. So the attack is not only specific to POS malwares, but the thing is that POS malwares are quite successful in these kinds of attacks. They are the ones who are causing the maximum damage. That's why I covered it specifically. There can be other attack vectors as well. I mean, using social engineering to do phishing attacks, or maybe exploiting vulnerabilities, or let's say brute forcing the password. I think a couple of months back there was news about some car washing shops in the United States. They were compromised, and the reason behind that was they were using default login passwords for the POS softwares that they were using. So there can be different attack vectors that the attackers can try on. But POS was something that was quite in news these days, so I thought of just covering it quickly. So okay, now so now we have the background on how things work, so we can just look into the fraud industry now. How exactly, what happens when your data has been stolen? Let's say you went to a POS terminal, you used your card at a POS terminal that was infected. So okay, your data is stolen now. So what happens next? How it goes underground? How is it helping cyber criminals make millions of money? So I've listed 3 important steps to multi-million-dollar fraud. The first one is the attack, which we have just now seen how the attacks work, how POS malwares attack the terminals. The next one is selling that information. Definitely, when you have the information, you have to sell it. You have to make return over your investments. And the last one is shop. Once you have the hold of, let's say, anyone's credit card information, how you go ahead and shop with that information, how you actually convert it into money. So that we'll see in a while now. Okay, so we have already seen how the attack phase works. Now let us move to the next phase, the underground shopping mall, how you sell that information. Now, the underground shopping mall, so what exactly is shopping mall? It's just basically a collection of all kinds of shops. You can just go and buy whatever stuff you want to. I mean, talking about Singapore, they have almost every metro station in Singapore has a shopping mall. So you can just go, you can choose whatever products you want to buy for. So this is pretty much the structure that is implemented in the underground ecosystem as well. So what exactly this underground shopping mall comprises of? So it comprises of malware authors, the phishing attackers, the people who sits at the top. They are the people who actually creates the attack. They are the people who actually contain the information. The next entity would be the forums and online shops that can facilitate in selling the information that has been stolen. Then there are buyers. Definitely when there is a shopping mall, there should be buyers, otherwise you will be at a loss. So the buyers are the next important entity of this mall. The last one is specialized services. There are some specialized services. This is pretty interesting that I actually formulated over the last 1 year of time while tracking different forums. So I found lots of specialized services that actually helps the buyers in order to, they want to do some kind of fraud transaction and they want to reduce their risk overhead, or let's say they might be busy with other stuff, they want to do other things. So they just want to cut down their overhead and they just want to buy some specialized services in order to conduct the crime. So we'll see what exactly comes under these specialized services. So the first entity of the underground shopping mall are the malware authors, phishing attackers, skimmers. Obviously, these guys are financially motivated since they are targeting the point of sale terminals. They are directly trying to impact the two key components of the payment system that we use, the card and the POS terminal. So definitely these guys are financially motivated. They want this information. They want to sell this information. They want to make profit out of it. It can be an insider threat. It can be a third-party IT service provider threat, or it can be an outsider threat. So the reason why I have mentioned these is because this is what we have seen in past couple of years in most of the breaches. Like if you take the example of one of the biggest legendary breaches that happened in one of the big retail chains in United States. So later on in the news, it was said that there was an IT service providing company that was, providing services for their IT assets. So someone from that company, that third-party company, might have infected the point-of-sale terminal. So insider threat or maybe third-party IT services can be one of the ways by which they can gain the information from POS machines. These guys also have backgrounds in payment processing and related service development. So this is something that I found out while tracking the people who actually sell these kinds of information or who have the possession to these kinds of information. So I came across many people who actually mentioned that, okay, they have been working in, let's say, developing a point of sale software, or maybe developing the plastic cards, or some kind of factory that develops these kinds of things. So in one way or the other, the guy who sits at the top in this ecosystem is related with the payment processing. Okay, so the next important entity would be the forums and online shops. You definitely need a place where you can advertise, where you can sell the information that you have gained from let's say, the malware authors. So if you just keep on following the trend, so it's the malware author who sits on the top, or the exploiters who sits on the top. Now he needs a place where he can sell the information. So that's where the forums and online shops comes into action. So what they do is that they can approach these forum owners, they can approach these online websites, or you can call it online shops, where they can just sell that information to the owners of these forums and just make their profit out of it. Now it's the forum's headache how they are actually going to communicate with the buyers. So the malware author might not be as good in communicating with people, so he just wants to just give away whatever 100,000 dumps or whatever information he has on credit cards. So that's where the forums and online shops comes into use. So it's pretty easy to find a lot of these shops online. I mean, you can even do a simple Google search to figure it out. But the main thing that separates one forum or one shop from the other is the source from where they get the information. So the source is a very critical thing. I mean, the kind of information that any forum holds, how fresh is their credit card data, from which infection vector are they getting that information, that is pretty critical. This is how a forum is decided whether it's a good one or it's a bad one, or is it selling some fake information. I mean, you cannot never be sure whether the information that any criminal forum is selling would be definitely legitimate, because it's crime everywhere. So if you look at this snapshot, you'll find that there are varieties of forums selling different kinds of data. They have all kinds of services. They have IRC channels to give you support 24/7. They have chat IDs. You can just go and chat with those people. They also have replacement services. If your card, let's say they sold you 10 cards, out of which 4 did not work, so they'll provide you replacement as well. You can just get your cards replaced. So they are pretty much professional as well. If you go to the good forums, they are quite professional. They work like, professional people who are actually doing crime in a very professional way. So the next important entity would be the buyer. So now the shop is set up, the malware has given the details to the shop owners. The next important thing is the buyer that comes in. The buyer is the one who would actually go to these forums and shops and purchase the credit card information. So what exactly the buyer's profile looks like? The profile ranges from newbies to regular experienced customers. They can buy single credit card detail, they can buy dumps, or they can buy fulls. So single credit card is just the information of one credit card. The dumps would be a collection of, let's say, 10 or 50 or 100 credit cards. You can just buy in bulk. That would be relatively cheaper. The last one is fulls. So by fulls, I mean is that it contains all the information. It will contain information like CVV. It will contain information like the registered bank address, the registered address of the card, the date of birth, the phone number of the card owner, and things like that. So fulls is something that is not picked up from POS malwares. POS malwares can only pick up the track 1 and track 2 data. So the information that is provided by fulls is usually picked up from, let's say, a hacked e-commerce website. When you want to shop things online on e-commerce website, you would require all these kinds of information like the CVV, the expiry date, and all those things. So CVV is nothing but just a verification. When your merchant is not physically present in front of you, then you use the CVV number to verify. So when you are doing online shopping, your merchant is somewhere on the cloud, so they want your CVV number to make sure that you have the physical presence of your card. Now you can purchase cards with specific options like country, city of issue, card issuing bank, the brand that you want. Let's say you are fond of one brand and not of the other, so you can just choose your option from there. You can also select the genre. We are pretty much excited about the kind of card we hold. Let's say I have a signature card, so I'll just flaunt it on the shops that, okay, I'm the signature card holder, I'm the platinum card holder. So this is something interesting for the criminals as well. They would definitely want to put their hands on signature or platinum cards and just strip you off the money. So why have I mentioned specifically country and city of issue is something that is a bit interesting here. So let's say you are traveling from United States to Singapore, and you want to use your credit card. So it might not work if you don't notify your bank beforehand that, okay, I'm traveling to Singapore, so I'll be using my card overseas, so you need to activate my overseas usage. If you don't do that, let's say I'm sitting in Singapore, I want to buy the credit card details of someone who is in United States. And if I use that card now, it won't work if the international activation is not there on his card. So it might raise an alarm to the banks as well that why is this card being used outside the permitted region. So that's why when a buyer goes online, he keeps these specifics in his mind, the kind of the country he wants to target, let's say the city as well. If you go to some cities like even in United States, even if the card is used outside the cities, it raises a flag for the banks that, okay, this might be a fraud transaction or might be a suspicious activity. It might not get blocked if the transaction value is not very high, but it will definitely get a flag in the automated systems. Bank brands, engineers, we have already discussed. The next one is purchase. So when the buyers purchase the credit card details from the forums and shop owners, they make cryptocurrencies to transfer the money. They can use wire transfers or money transfers. The price of single card would depend on the factors like the brand, the genre, the platinum or signature card, the expiry date, etc. Cost of dump is calculated based on the number of CC details it has, let's say 50 or 100. Fulls can be slightly more expensive than others as it contains more detailed information. As I told, it contains information like the CVV, the date of birth, and expiry, and all those things. So that's where the fulls information is far more expensive compared to others. So here is a snapshot from one of the very popular forums that I picked up. So that forum came into news a lot because it was known to sell the credit card information from the breach in United States, the big retail breach which we all heard of. So if you look here, it has all sorts of options. You can select the country you want to, you can select the bank, you can select the CC types, you can select the base you want to. So initially, if you had gone to that forum 2 years back, there were no such options. So what the forum guys did was that the customer is God. So whenever customer complains something, you have to solve that problem if you are running a business. So what they did was that they heard that, okay, country is a problem. People want to buy cards, particularly from a specific country. So that's why they gave the option of country. Then later on, they came to know that, okay, city might be a problem as well. So let's give a city. People want to buy specific brands. People want to pay more for good generic cards. So that's how things evolved in this particular forum. That's how every forum actually evolved themselves, by listening to the customer complaints. So it's all business, be it crime or be it legitimate. So people just want to listen to what problems their customer have. Okay, so now the buyer has the information. He has now purchased the information from the online, let's say the forums and shops. So what next? So there are two key ways by which he can use that information. The one is the online carding, and the next one is the offline carding. So it's pretty much explanatory what the two means, but there are some specifics that goes inside them. So that we'll see now what exactly these two terms would mean. So if we start with online carding, so it's a process of using the stolen credit card for purchasing goods online. I mean, using e-commerce websites to do the shopping from the information that you have. Now, definitely you would need the full information. You need the CVV as well. You need the expiry dates and other kinds of information, and registered address, phones, etc. would be required. The next and important step would be to find a cardable website. Now, this is a very popular term in the underground forums and websites, like what exactly a cardable website is. So here is a flowchart that I prepared to verify whether a website is cardable or not. I think it's not very readable. I'll just quickly read out what it means. So let's say you go to an e-commerce website and you want to verify whether it's a cardable website or not. So what would you look for? So you look for whether that website only ships to the registered address where the card is being registered. Is it so? I mean, there are, like, if you go to the popular e-commerce websites, they specifically ask for the billing and the shipping address. Is it differing? Is it the entire country is differing? Okay, the billing address is, let's say, somewhere in Singapore and the shipping address is somewhere in Russia. So they verify these kinds of things to make sure that these two things should match. And if that is not the case, then you are done with step one. So you'll move to the second step that asks for second step verification. That is one another popular way by which credit cards, or let's say any online purchase, is verified by sending you a one-time password through SMS or maybe through emails. If that is not there, you are again through to the second step. Then comes the last step, that is deciding specific processing options. I mean, whether the site provides overseas shipping. Let's say the card you are using, you want to ship the products overseas, whether that facility is provided by the e-commerce website or not. So these are the things that you would look for before judging whether a website is cardable or not. And if you find it, that's it. You can now shop whatever you want from that particular website. So these steps, it's not that hard to find a cardable website. I would not like to name any particular shop, but it's not very difficult to actually find such kinds of shops selling wines or maybe cigarettes or, let's say, second-hand items. They usually don't have that strong security checks. So it's not that difficult to find a cardable website. And this underground community it's very tightly knitted. Let's say tomorrow I find 10 different cardable websites. What I'll do is that I'll go to my favorite shop and I'll post it there that, okay, these are the 10 cardable websites where you all can go and earn and buy whatever you want to. So this is how the entire system works. Everyone tries to help the others. They try to share whatever information that they have. So once you have determined a cardable website, you are through with it. You can now use your purchased credit card details to do the online shopping. The next one is offline or in-store carding. So as the term suggests, you are doing in-store carding, or you are going to the stores itself to purchase whatever you want to. So what are the steps that would be involved in this case? So you need to generate counterfeit cards. Definitely, if you want to go to the stores and purchase something, you need to have the counterfeit cards as well. So you need to generate those cards. Choose a shop or a cash out option. While tracking these underground websites, I've seen people, they discuss about these things like, okay, if you go to Denver, if you go to this particular shop, there is a lady sitting there. She's only busy filing her nails. She doesn't care about your card, what kind of card you are present to her. She'll just swipe it. She'll just give you the money. There are no CCTV installed. So these are the things that these people actually look for. The minimum the security risk, the maximum, the better it is for them. So they keep on sharing these kinds of information, the kinds of shops you can go to where there is minimum risk, or let's say the self-service shops or the gas stations where you can just fill up your tanks and use the cards. There is no one to actually verify what kinds of cards you're using, whether is it fake or is it original. No one will ask for your IDs. So choosing a shop or a cash out option is something that is important. Now picking up a specialized service. Now this is something that is pretty interesting that we'll discuss in a while, what exactly the specialized services are that the buyer wants to pick up from these underground shops. Okay, so generating counterfeit cards. So if you want to generate fake cards from the information that you have, you need to have the right combination of hardwares and softwares. So it's easy to find some magnetic stripe readers and writers in the market. You can find it on e-commerce websites. You can find it on hardware stores as well. They have some fake plastic cards as well. They would look like something in the picture. So this is a bit of a suspicious card. So you would rather want to use a more generic one. So you need to have the right combination of the hardware, a magnetic stripe reader and writer, and a software that can actually help you write the information on the credit card. So a software would look something like this. This is a very popular software that is available. I mean, you can use this software to write any information on the credit cards if you have the hardware as well. So if you look here, it asks for track 1, 2, and 3 information. So this is the same track information that we have seen. Track 1 information, track 2, track 3. So whatever you have just now purchased from the underground forums, you can now just go ahead and provide that information here, and it will write it on your credit cards. Okay. So now you have the counterfeit cards. Now the important thing that comes up is the specialized services. Now this is something that has evolved with time. Initially there were no specialized services, but with time, as the buyers evolved, as the business evolved, they wanted someone else to do the hard work or do the running work for them. So that's where the specialized services came into the fraud ecosystem. So I've listed all these under 3 special categories. One is the runner, the next one is the dropper, and the last one is the shopper. So what I mean by all these 3, the first one is the runners. So it's the individual or group that specializes in ATM cash withdrawals. So if you remember, I think in 2013 there was an incident where millions of dollars were washed out from ATM machines using from different locations of the world. So how did that happen? Even though that incident is not really directly related with credit card frauds, but it's pretty much related how runners operate. So what they do is that if they have the bank information, if they have your card information, what they would do is that they would generate multiple counterfeit cards for the same information. And what they will do that they will separate themselves at different locations, at different banks, at different ATMs, not exactly banks, basically the ATM machines, and they'll start withdrawing money in a go. So by the time you pick up your phone, you call your bank, you tell them that, okay, there is some kind of fraud transaction going on, they would have already wiped out quite a sum of money. So there are 2 reasons why they do is. One is that they can quickly get as much money as possible, and the second is that definitely it reduces the security risk of getting caught. So there are some ways by which this process might fail. For example, the minimum withdrawal limit, let's say the withdrawal limit on a card is only $1,000 and you have, let's say two runners already withdrew $1,000, then the third and fourth might not be able to do that. But still, they before doing this operation, they make sure that the things go aligned. If you again go back to that 2013 incident, so what the hackers did was that they were actually able to break into the third-party system that the bank was holding, and they increased the withdrawal limit of the particular bank that they wanted, or the particular individual they wanted to target. And once the limit was increased, they just went on withdrawing cash from different parts. So they often generate multiple counterfeit cards for single card to do multiple withdrawals. They have fake digital wallets, cryptocurrencies, online money transfer accounts to safely withdraw money from stolen card. Now this is another property that the runners usually have. So what they do is that they open up, using their fake IDs, they can open up accounts to we all use money transfers, right? There are some specialized services who claim that they are the fastest ways to transfer money worldwide. So it can be used otherwise as well. You can use your fake IDs to open an account there. Then let's say you have the stolen card, you just transfer that money to that fake account, and the runner will go ahead and withdraw that money from that particular account. So this is also one way by which the runners operate. Runners are the risk bearers, and their profit margin can vary between, let's say, 40 to 50 to 60%, whatever money you want to withdraw. It all depends on the relation that you have with the buyer. So here is a snapshot that I picked up from one of the forums. This guy, he's quite active in the underground forums. He goes by the name of Van Persie. So what he as you can see, he claims himself as this trusted awarded seller. So this guy specializes in wire transfers, online money transfers, and all those kinds of stuff. You can see he has a Yahoo ID as well and an ICQ if you want to chat with the guy, if you want to deal with him, that okay, let's discuss, let's do business, and he's always available. He also has a rate card. You can choose whatever suits you. There are some terms and conditions as well, quite small to read. It's nothing that is just mentioned that you can do only 4 transactions a month from this particular buyer. You need to keep confidentiality and all those things. The next second important specialized service is the dropper. So what exactly the dropper does is that it serves as the drop point for goods purchased online, thus securing the identity of the actual buyer. Let's say you want to do online shopping, you have found a Cardable website, then you definitely cannot ship the good to your own home address. I mean, it can be tracked back to you that, okay, you are actually shipping stuff to your own address. So that's quite a blunder. So these are the things how this ecosystem has evolved. These things were not there earlier, but as banks and people got active, these kinds of specialized services start coming up. And what they do is that they charge for some profit over whatever goods they are delivering. So they work by renting apartments, finding empty houses, registering PO boxes, and fake IDs. Let's say you rent an apartment for a month or so and you just let the buyer know that, okay, this is my address. Or let's say you registered a PO box using a fake student ID or let's say a library ID and things like that. So once you have that kind of possession, what you will do is that you will let the buyer know. He'll ship all those items to that particular drop address. And once the item has reached to that dropper, the dropper would go ahead, pick up that stuff, and he will hand it over to the buyer. So since the dropper is bearing fair amount of risk, his profit may vary from 30 to 40 or maybe 50%, or he can simply ask for the same good that you're ordering. Let's say you want to buy a PlayStation, so the dropper can say that, okay, just purchase 2 PlayStation, one for me and one for you. So here is another guy who is quite known for his dropping services. So what exactly he does is that he uses the non-trackable courier services in order to get things delivered. So he has clearly mentioned the kinds of regions he would cover, the different geographical locations where he has, let's say, fake address or fake PO boxes and all kinds of services that he can provide to the buyer. He has a rate card as well, just like the initial one we saw. So if you want to buy laptops, you want to buy iPhone, these are the kinds of money he would ask for, maybe $350 to $500 or $250 for an iPhone. So it's pretty much, I mean, consistent with the business. You just get the items delivered to his place and he would just charge his money. The last one is the shopper. So the shopper specializes in shopping with counterfeit cards that is provided by the carder. So the shopper can be an individual or a group that specializes in conducting nervousness-free shopping of goods using the fake cards. Let's say I am a buyer and I'm not really confident enough to use the fake credit cards at shops and buy things. I might have a shaky hand or I might sweat out so that it can raise suspicion. So this is where the shopper's specialized service comes into use. So what these guys do is that they take your counterfeit cards and they'll pick up your counterfeit card, they'll pick up your shopping list, and they'll just go ahead and do whatever you want to shop for. So let's say you want to buy a luxury item, then you should look like one who can actually afford it. You should not look like someone who is creepy and all of a sudden he comes to buy a luxury watch and things like that. So this is where this kind of specialized service becomes quite useful in the underground market. So the shoppers also have fail-safe techniques to dodge the payment supervisor in case the card fails to authenticate. Let's say the payment exceeded limit or the card might have been disabled. You don't know beforehand. So when you use the card, then only you would come to know that, okay, this card is not working. So they have fail-safe techniques. They have fake IDs. Let's say the payment was over a certain limit. So the merchant might ask for an ID to be produced. So they have the possession to fake IDs, which they can immediately present. So these are the kinds of stuff that the shoppers can do. So the buyer now don't have to take the overhead of doing these things. He can just rent a shopper in the underground forums. He can just give these information and that's all. So profit cut can range between 10 to 20 or maybe 30%. It all depends upon the kinds of stuff that you want to shop for. Okay, so the demand and supply. So whatever we have discussed up till now was pretty much how the ecosystem is framed, how it works, how different entities are linked with each other. Now what the things that we will discuss now is pretty much on the money flow, how exactly the demand is maintained, the demand for the credit card information definitely, how is it maintained, how it is priced and things like that. So any new disclosure about POS breach suddenly raises the demand for fresh CC dumps in the market. So people will know that, okay, this looks like a recent breach. So whatever credit card information that particular forum is selling, that might be fresh. I mean, the banks might not yet be aware of that particular breach, or the payment industry might not be knowing it. So the information will be pretty much fresh. Now this leads to the increase in price of the dumps. Let's say I am the forum owner and I have a very good source for getting fresh credit card dumps. So what I would do is that I'll claim that, okay, this is the kind of information that I'm selling to you all guys. It's still not public. No one knows about this breach from where I'm getting this information. So the dumps are pretty much fresh. You can just go ahead and cash out as much as you want to. So this would lead to a elevated price of the credit cards. I mean, the information that I would sell will definitely be costlier. Now, the problem arises when the demand is less and the supply is huge. When would this situation come up? So let's say, for example, I was the malware author and I had 100 dumps. So initially what I'll do is that I'll sell only 50 of those to the forum owners. Now the forum owners will only release 10 of those to the people to buy. They would do that slowly and slowly, so that there is no surplus in the industry. There is still a requirement. There are more people asking for more and more dumps. In this way, they can charge higher prices. So when would the demand be high? Let's say after a week, the news comes out that, okay, XYZ retail chain has been compromised, and I was the one who had did that. So now I know that, okay, the media, the finance industry, the banks, they all know about that this particular retail chain has been compromised. So what they will do is that they will try and block all the credit cards. They'll try and monitor all the credit cards that are being used in the particular time frame when the breach happened. So what I'll do is that I'll sell out my remaining cards as well. I'll quickly sell out the remaining 50 which I had kept. I'll give it to the forum owners for whatever price they want, and the forum owners will in turn push it down to the buyers at whatever cost they want to. So this is the condition where the demand becomes more. I mean the demand is less, but the supply increases. So this is the case where the price starts falling. I mean, initially you were buying some credit card detail for, let's say, XYZ number of dollars. Now you have to pay a lot lesser than whatever that was earlier. If you look at this chart, this is something that I have tracked based on the probability, like the cost and the supply. So initially when the supply is not that high, the cost gradually increases, but once it reaches a particular limit, let's say once the information is public, the cost starts falling down. Same thing happens with the time as well. The larger a dump or a credit card detail stays in the market, the lower will be its price. Okay, so this is a concise picture of whatever we have discussed so far. This represents a generic view. So if you remember again, the malware author or the attack originator is the guy who sits at the top. He's the one who is actually doing the all hard work. Now what he does is that the kinds of information he has stolen, he would go ahead and he would sell that kind of all those information to the underground shop owners. There can be other sellers as well. By other sellers, I mean, let's say someone who has compromised an e-commerce website, or let's say ATM skimmers, which are quite, I mean, you all have heard about these terms a lot. So these can be under the category of other sellers as well. So what they will do is that they will also contact the forum owners. They'll just give their whatever information they have, and they will get their profit cut. So the blue line, it represents the communication direction, and the red line, it basically represents the money flow, how the money is flowing. So if you see initially, the money is paid by the forum owners to the attack originators. Now once the shop owners, they have that kind of information, they have whatever they need. Now what they'll do is that they'll set up the shop, they'll start advertising themselves, and that's where the buyer starts coming into the picture. So when the buyer buys the information, when he picks up his information, he now pays to the forum owners and sellers. So that's where the forum guys, the ones who have set up the shop, they start making return over their investments. So if you look at the money flow, again, it's the money that is paid by the buyer to the shop owners. Now the buyer has the information he wants. Now what he wants to do, he wants to do online shopping, or he wants to go offline. So he can pick up specialized services based on whatever he wants to. If he wants to go for online shopping, he can again pick up the specialized service of, let's say, the dropper, the guy who can actually give you a drop address where you can have your stuff delivered. Then there are shoppers and runners that the offline guys can pick up. As we have discussed, the shoppers would be the guys who just pick up your counterfeit cards, your shopping list, and they'll just go on shopping. Then there are runners who have two basic functionalities. They can either use online wire transfers, or they can just withdraw cash from ATMs. Okay, so future scope, challenges and solutions. There isn't much of future scope, but credit card fraud has been there for quite a long time. They have been there for very long. POS, RAM scraping malwares, I did Google search, so I found out that the first one that appeared was somewhere close to 2007. So it's like over 7 years now. So neither POS malwares are new, nor the credit card fraud system is new. It's just that it has evolved. It has developed itself with time. It has added more and more functionalities. It has added more and more features that is attracting more and more cyber criminals to this kind of cybercrime. So before that, I used to track exploit kits a lot. So up till 2011, I guess exploit kits was the most popular underground cyber crime. I mean, it led to huge profits to the cyber criminals. It was a two-way profit actually for the cyber criminals. So let's say I am the owner of the exploit kit, so I can take money from the malware authors as well for dropping their samples. I can take money from the exploit writers as well for dropping their exploits. So exploit kits was the very popular, I mean, it was one of the most profitable cybercrime business that time, but now credit card frauds has taken over because of their sophistication, the way they work, the way they have organized themselves, the way they have tightly knitted themselves into a crime group. It's far more profitable than any other cybercrime right now. So the major challenge that the ecosystem, the fraud system that it faces is the double fraud. By double fraud, I mean is that fraudsters conducting more and more fraud with the fraudsters. So it's like, let's say I had 1,000 credit cards which I've already used and I know that they are not working. I'll just go ahead, I'll set up a shop, I'll sell it for cheap. So definitely the crimeware people, the fraudsters will come to my shop and buy that. So what I'm doing fraud with the fraudsters. So that's what I just wrote it as double fraud. So that's the major challenge that this ecosystem faces. I mean, since you are doing fraud, you cannot actually go ahead and blame someone that, hey, you are doing fraud with my fraud, so you should not do that. So that's the major challenge. Now, there is challenge with the payment industry as well. They have to deal with this issue. They are dealing with this issue very seriously. But the thing is that the credit card usage is very widespread and it's growing day by day. There are more and more developing countries that are coming up. Thousands of users every day buying more and more credit cards. So the problem is widespread. Now, enforcing a global policy is a challenge. Let's say, for example, after the magnetic stripes, the EMV chip-in cards, I think many of you might be having those cards that have a chip on top of it. So those chip-in cards were actually came up and they were like, it was said that this can be far more secure than the magnetic strip. So it came out, I think, 5 or 6 years back, and the cutoff date in United States is still mid of 2016, by which all the cards will be ported from magnetic stripe to EMV chip-in cards. So you can imagine the amount of time a country like United States can take. Similarly, it's with India as well. They have given the cutoff date as end of 2016, by which all the cards would be ported to chip-in cards. So enforcing a global policy takes a lot of time. The payment industry needs to update the POS devices as well. I mean, if you are updating the payment way, you need to have the right payment setup as well. You need to update the POS devices and all those things. So solutions like EMVs or chip and pin cards and RFID cards exist. There are RFID cards as well these days where you just need to wave your cards against the POS machines and the payment will be made. But as I said, I mean, enforcing something that is global, it takes time. It takes time to reach into different countries. It takes time to reach into different stores. So when I'm in Singapore, I might find all the advanced ways of paying. I find RFID as well. And when I go to my hometown in India, and if I give a credit card, the first excuse I'll get is that, oh, my machine is shut down. Give me 5 minutes. I'll put it on. Because there are not many users of cards back there. So they don't really care about those kinds of stuff. So that's the major challenge that the payment industry or the card industry is facing right now. Okay, that's it from my side. Thanks a lot, everyone, for listening. Now I would just open up quickly for questions, if anyone has. Yeah. Okay, it's actually easiest, I would say, if you do some kind of research, you will find that countries like Indonesia, India, these countries have been, I mean, they are very badly hit these days. So if you look into news, if you look at so there are other countries, I mean, almost every country is affected one way or the other by these kinds of frauds, but it's pretty much, it's very effective in countries like Indonesia, Thailand, India. In these regions, the eastern regions, it's quite easier. Because the banks are also not that, I mean, they do try to stop these things, but It depends. I mean, it depends if the attackers have matured a lot, if they are learning more from the Western attacks, let's say from Western countries, then definitely it would be difficult to track those things. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, right. Right. Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. How do they do what? Where they check whether the card number is actually valid or not. Oh, okay. So that is not a confirmed. So there are two questions that he put up. So first one is whether the EMV chips are really useful in protecting you. Then the answer is definitely no. I mean, the difference between the magnetic strips and the EMV chip is the way they store the information. The information on the EMV chip is encrypted. The storage is encrypted, but once it goes inside the POS machine, it again gets unencrypted and it gets copied into the RAM, and that's where the POS malware actually attacks. So it's not going to help in that way. The second question was that there are some other services as well. For example, there are services which checks whether the card is actually let's say you bought a certain credit card information, so it will go ahead and check whether that information is whether that card number is actually valid or not. So there is an algorithm called Lohn's algorithm that is a accepted standard in the payment industry for validating any credit card number or the PAN or the personal account number. So usually they verify it with the Lohn's algorithm to make sure that the card number is correct, but it doesn't mean that card would be actually live or it might be actually useful. It only verifies that, okay, this card number actually exists. Okay. Any other question? Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. So for CVVs, it's like you need to have access to, let's say you are doing some kind of key logging or maybe from hacked e-commerce websites. So when you want to do the online, let's say you want to buy products online, then the website will ask you for all those information, the CVV, the expiry, the name, the address, billing address, and shipping address. So if you have an hold of and compromised e-commerce website, then these are the information that you can pick up from there. So that's where they pick up this. So this is the information which we call as fulls, the complete information about an individual. So that's why they are costly as well in the underground markets. I finished right on time. Yeah. Yeah, the difference is in the storage, the way they store the information. So the chip-in cards or the RFID cards, the way they store the information is secure. They follow the normal PCI DSS standard formats, but once they go inside the POS terminals, so once you use that card, it will have to unencrypt that information before they request the banks. So these POS malwares, they are attacking the place where the information gets unencrypted. So it doesn't matter how you have stored it on the card. What matters is how it's getting read in the devices. Yeah. Sorry. Have I? Oh yeah, Tor network. Yeah, that's a very good thing to point out right now. So basically, there are many forums and shops which are quite exclusive. I mean, you just cannot just go in there and access it. And these are the ones that actually sells the real information. So what I mean by exclusive is that joining those forums might be like you need a referral, you need someone from inside the forum to refer you before you can join it, or maybe you need to pay something, or maybe you need to be on an encrypted channel, let's say a Tor network. So these are the kinds of stuff that these people are doing to actually prevent people like security researchers or let's say financial institutions to actually know what kind of information they are sharing. So definitely there are lots of shops that are particularly set up on Tor networks. There are many, I mean, Agoda, there was one called Revolution, which I think shut down just last week, and it just ran away with all the money that people had placed in that shop. So yeah, definitely Tor network is, I mean, we all know it's one of the most biggest network that is being used by cyber criminals these days. We have more time for questions? No? All right, guys, thank you so much.